see what he can do in the midst of unbelievers, on the leading edge with his word, his power, his grace, and his mercy. For God's sakes, we're Lutheran. This is what we know.
Come on. The Bible is a book of principles, promises, practices, precepts, patterns, prayers, and prophecies that give me the ability to make predictions about outcomes in the future. So I can know what's going to happen before it happens, and I can position myself in the path of prosperity.
This is the type of stuff we have to look out for. Yo, it sounds tempting. I mean, it sounds nice when you listen to what he's saying, until you realize that the Bible can be used for a lot of things. But we have to know that the main premise of the Bible is about a Savior coming and delivering forgiveness of sins to reconcile us to God. That's the main premise. As far as all this...
And I can position myself in the path of prosperity. Let me define prosperity. Prosperity means flow.
Good.
I can position myself in the path of prosperity, so when the flow comes, I'm standing there buckets in hand.
If you notice, when you really listen to what he's saying, it's all about him. Betterment of himself, betterment of things of that nature. And it's the prosperity gospel. It just tickles your ear and makes everything, it removes the aspect of I'm a sinner and need someone to save me, rather than I'm out here trying to do the best I can and I found a way for me to get to the bag, make my life easier. This book's gonna help me make my life easier. I don't want to minimize a certain aspect of what I'm about to say, because following the moral laws and studying the Bible, okay, we have first use, second use, and third use of the law. And basically, a person can just hold the first use and just notice things. Thou shalt not steal. That's a good point. I don't want to steal. Thou shalt not kill. You know what? That's a good point. Thou shalt not kill. And then go back and compare it to ancient words of wisdom and think they're following some type of Christian activity or some type of moral code, and they'll be doing good. Like, they literally will be loving their neighbor in that sense. But if you don't realize the aspect of putting your faith in Jesus, you're missing the boat. And that's the premise when we say faith alone that we're talking about. That's the heart of it. Is a person can go out here and do the best they can. Disclaimer, they're going to fail when you compare it to God's standard. Everybody does. Matthew 5, last sentence in Matthew 5. Go look at it yourself. That's the standard. That's what I'm saying. They'll go and they will live a life that's like, oh man, he's so nice. He's so charitable. Look at this guy, man. Woo! If they don't realize their need of Jesus, they're still going to be judged for their sins at the end of the day. Should we strive to be like that? Yes. But you have to realize the main premise isn't just that. The main premise is Jesus. He is the main. You are not the main character in the story. As my daughter likes to say, you are not the main character. You really aren't. You really aren't. And when you listen to and you really step back from the ear tickling, saying, yo, stop tickling my ear. Let me hear this. You'll notice that they're making their self or asking you to think you're the main character. How can you make things easier for yourself? You follow these principles, man, you're gonna get to the bag. Yeah. So technically you're not loving your neighbor because your neighbor needs to be loved. You're not loving your neighbor as you want to be loved. You're more so doing it because you think you can get you to a better situation in your life. What if loving your neighbor could make things harder for yourself? I mean, that's the reality of it. You could take on more financial hardships by being there for somebody. Being involved in certain situations that could be detrimental, to be honest with you. No one has to look at the reality of it is there's a consequence sometimes to that. If you're only looking at, yo, I don't want to risk that consequence, I ain't getting involved in that. That's this type of principle. I'm only getting involved because it's going to better me. I'm not going to get involved because it actually helps that person. It's a sad way of looking at things. That's not the biblical perspective. It really isn't. It really isn't. And it's sad that so many people have got caught up in this prosperity gospel, prosperity message, where it's like you're using the Bible just so, as he said, be in the flow, just so you can. He meant something like, I can see things are about to happen and put myself there and be there with open buckets. Yo, when people start talking about the Bible like that, we have to have discernment and be like, yo, you're missing the whole point. You're missing the whole point of Christ dying for us while we were sinners. Like you took that whole chapter out. And you view it as Christ came and showed me how to live my best life now. And not to go on a rant, but truth is if everybody lived their best life, everybody was rich, who would be there to counsel, minister, and care for the poor, the downtrodden, the hurt? I personally don't think everybody's meant to have the best life that we describe, that we think is the best life. Like, there's something to be said that in your situation, in your station in life, God has called you there to be able to speak to that to other people, to be able to be there and be somebody who can love their neighbor in that situation, who can, when it comes up, point them to Christ. Be that middleman where it's like, hey, they're like, man, you're always in a good mood. Maybe you're not the jippy, happy-go-lucky person, but they notice, oh man, you're always willing to help somebody. You don't get caught up in the gossip. You don't do this, man. What's up with you, man? Hey, that's not the way, we're supposed to operate per what God has laid down and sent forth, It leads to a conversation, not being overly preachy. But everybody has different techniques. All I'm saying is we have to keep the main premise of Christianity, the main premise. We can't have it, and this is one of the problems with it's a relationship, because people have different types of relationships. They have that friend they go hang out with, have a good time with. They have the friend they study with, the friend they talk about their dreams and aspirations with, rather than it being a religion. And there's a relationship component in there, not saying it's not, but there's actual tenets and stuff that we have to be like, yo, no, the premise of the Bible isn't my friends helping me get the bag. It's Christ crucified, dying for my sins and reconciling me to God. Anyhow, enough of my rant. Y'all have a good day or good night, Wittenberg Project.